A new football season is starting, and in this video, I'm going to show you how to use our simulation tools here over at Stokastic. If you enjoy this content, like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Also, want to let you guys know that with the start of a new season, there are new tools on the website. As a result, all new packages as well. And we now have our simulation packages starting at $29.95. But for week one of the NFL season, if you sign up with the promo code kickoff, you actually could get access to our sims and our core package for just $1 for the first week of the NFL season. So check that out if you're watching this ahead of the start of the football season. But let's get into how to use the tools. And where this is going to start is with the contest generator. And what you're going to be doing here is building all of the lineups that you ultimately end up simulating. So what you want to do is make sure that you have NFL selected. We've got all the different leagues that we support here for Sims. But if you're building football lineups for the NFL, then you want to have NFL selected. Also, you want to select the correct site that you're playing on. Our simulation support DraftKings, FanDuel, as well as Owner's Box. Just for the purposes of this, I'm going to select DraftKings. Now, you also want to make sure you have the right slate selected so that you're building lineups for the slate that you're going to be playing. And within our Sims tools, we support every single slate that's offered on FanDuel and DraftKings. So whether it's the main slates, the showdown slates, the afternoon slates, they are all up in here in our simulation tools. And then pool size. Now, there's a couple of different things that you're going to want to be considering here. First, our core package allows you to build up to 1,000 lineups. Our max package allows you to build up to 10,000 lineups. But what you want to be doing when you select the pool size is you want to select the amount of lineups to build that most closely resembles the field you're playing in. So if you're playing in a large Millie Maker contest, well, then you want to build as many lineups as you possibly can. But if you're simulating for, say, a single entry that might only have 500 entries, well, then you would select 500. For this, though, I'm going to select 10,000. Now, stack type exposures, this is going to dictate the types of lineups that your lineups are in terms of the QB plus how many players they're paired with from their team, and then also any potential run back options. Now, the goal here is to make a set of lineups that emulates what the field is doing, and that is what our default settings are. It's based on our research that's going to show this is the percentage of each sort of lineup the field is making. So the only way you really want to deviate from this is if you have research for maybe a specific slate that you think the stack types are going to be looking a little bit different. And then team controls, this is something that you are not typically going to have to use, but maybe there's like a crazy weather scenario where a game gets canceled on late notice and you just want to remove all those players from that game from the player pool before our projections update or something like that. Well, then right from here, you could remove teams and that will make you a set of lineups when you build your lineups here that don't include any players from those games. Now, after all this is set, you're going to want to generate lineups. So what we're doing right here is we're building 10,000 lineups because I have this set on a pool size of 10,000. And then after this, we're going to be simulating out all of these lineups. Now, what these lineups are actually doing that's being built, and I kind of hinted at this before, is it is supposed to be a replica of what the field is expected to do. So this isn't the players you want the most exposure to. This isn't a thing where if you want to take a stand on a player, you wouldn't be doing it here. The purpose of the contest generator is simply to make a set of lineups that mirrors our projected ownership, what the field is expected to do, as well as the lineup types like QB +1, QB +2, or maybe a naked QB. And then any sort of customization, more of that is going to be coming after this when we're on the simulation page. And to build out 10,000 lineups, as you guys will see here, it takes anywhere from like 60 to 90 seconds, somewhere around those sorts of time constraints. And now after this is done, then we could simulate the lineups, but there's also some ways here that you could make alterations to these lineups. However, once again, you don't need to be using these for the most part. So the boost ownership, when you want to be using this, is if you disagree with our projected ownership. So right here, we have CeeDee Lamb projected for 29.2% ownership. The pool exposure was 30.2%. All of the players that show up here should be very close in the pool exposure to our actual projected ownership. It's never going to be all that far off. But if you do think that, let's say, CeeDee Lamb is not going to be 30% owned, maybe you think he's going to be like 25% owned and you want to change our contest pool here to reflect that, well, then you go in here and you give him a down boost. And then when you regenerate lineups, it would generate lineups with slightly less CeeDee Lamb. But once again, you only want to be doing that if you disagree with their ownership projections. You don't want to be doing that if you want to get more or less of a player. That's not what you're going to be doing on that page. If you want to make changes to the amount of exposure you get to players, we're going to be doing that later on the simulation page. Now, afterwards here, we're going to go to simulate lineups. This is after you have all your lineups built out and you're good with all of the pool exposures and all of that. Now, on this page, there's a few things to be taking note of. First off, you want to once again make sure you have the right site selected, the right slate you're playing on, and now the percentage payout to first. This is going to be based on whatever the percentage to first is in the contest you're playing. So, for instance, let's say that Week 1, Millie Maker has a $4 million prize pool and it's $1 million to first. Well, $1 million, that's 25% of $4 million. So you'd select 25% to first. The way you figure this out, it's pretty simple. It's just the overall prize pool, the overall amount that's going to first place, and you just divide the first place prize divided by the entire prize pool, and that's going to get you a percent payout to first place. You could also customize the projections here. So this is one of the ways that you can make your lineups more unique to what it is your preferences are. So let's say you have an entire set of your own projections. You can upload them, and all you'd have to do is really simply select a CSV. And in that CSV, you'd have 3 columns, one that says player name, one that says projection, one that says ownership, and then all of that data put in here, and then you upload it, and all of the data on here will change based on what it is that you personally have projected. But maybe there's just an individual player that you want to make a change to. Like maybe you think Josh Allen is under projected, you think he should be projected for 25 fantasy points. Then you can just type in 25, and then you're going to have a different projection on Josh Allen than what our data is. If you want to rewind it, you just press that, and it goes back to the initial projection. And then if you want to just quickly make a 1 fantasy point change, you could do plus arrows, you could do minus arrows, and that'll change it by 1 fantasy point. Now, after you're done uploading your custom projections or making any alterations you want, which you don't have to do, it's just a personal preference if you would like to do it, then you could go and run the contest simulation by pressing this button right here. Now, what's happening here is we are simulating out the entire slate. So all of those lineups we built out in the contest generator, built out 10,000 of them on the page before, they are now all playing against each other 40,000 times in our simulations, and it's on a play-by-play basis. So every single game that's on the slate, it is being played on a play-by-play basis by our simulations 40,000 times, and all of the lineups that we built before, they are playing against each other in a GPP format, and the payout structure is going to be based on the percentage to first that we'd selected there, and that's where it's important you make sure you select the correct percentage to first. It's not going to make massive changes. Like it's not like one of them is going to give you, say, 10% Josh Allen, the other one's going to give you 30%, but it is going to make some minor alterations in terms of sorting your lineups to make sure that the best lineups for the contest you are playing in are being taken into account with the percentage payout to first. And then also what's going to happen after all of these lineups are done being simulated is you're going to see on screen a breakdown of all the lineups that are built, the projected ROI for all of those lineups based on our simulations, as well as some other data like how many fantasy points it's expected to score, what the ownership is of each individual lineup, and then some other metrics as well, like how often it finishes in the top 10 percentile. And this is going to help us figure out the best overall lineups to play based on all the ones that were built out. But what you really want to be looking for when this is done here in a second is the catch-all metric, which is the simulated ROI, because everything else like fantasy points, ownership, how often a lineup is expected to win in GPP, that catch-all metric of the sim ROI, that encapsulates all of that, and it's going to really help you identify which the best lineups are. So you see right here, the sim ROI, you'll see that the best lineup we have in that set of sims, it had a 455.1% simulated ROI. So that means of all the sims that we ran out, of the 10,000 lineups we built, and then when they played against each other 40,000 times, this lineup had a 455.1% sim ROI. Now, what I'm going to do here is favorite 150 lineups, and you can favorite however many lineups you're playing here. If you're playing 20 lineups, you can favorite 20. If it's 50, you can favorite 50. Or if it's a specific number, you do favorite custom out and type in 56 if that's the number you're playing. I'll select 150 lineups for this purpose here. And then all of these other columns you'll see here, it's different data on these lineups. the sim ROI, projected fantasy points, the expected ownership in each of the lineups, the team that's being stacked in the lineup, the stack type. So you see here QB +2. That's going to mean Tua with 2 of his pass catchers, which in this lineup is Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. You'll see down here, there's a lineup that says QB +2 +1 opponent. That means that it is a quarterback with 2 of his pass catchers and 1 run back. So in this, it is Tua with Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and then I believe that the Dolphins are playing the Jaguars in week 1. So Evan Ingram is that run back there from the +1. Now, something that a lot of people frequently asked me last year, so I'll cover it right here, is how do you filter out certain types of lineups? Because every once in a while, people might say they only want to play a QB single stack or they don't want to play QB triple stack. So let's unfavorite all these lineups here, and I'll show you how it is that you could filter out these individual lineups. So here I'd select filter after pressing these 3 dots, and then let's go stack type contained QB +1. And now all that's going to be filtered here is just all of our top lineups that are single stack QB lineups. And you could also do something like this as well. If let's say you want to not have any triple stacks in your lineups, you could also select here does not contain. And then you could type in QB +3. And then any lineup that was QB +3 gets filtered out of your lineups. But for this, I'm not going to filter anything. If you want to remove a filter, just go to the filters, remove all. And now you see all of the top lineups are here. And I'm going to go favorite the top 150 lineups. One thing that isn't important for main slates, but actually does become important for showdowns is the dupes column. And this is actually, I think, is one of the best, most useful aspects of simulations in our contest generator is we can take dupes into account. And that's really, really helpful for something like showdown. And it is also included in our simulated ROI column here. But there might be a lineup for showdown that maybe say it projects really well from a fantasy point basis. And as a result, there's 1,000 people in the field that are expected to play that lineup. That will show up in the dupes column, how many times we're expecting it to be duplicated. And then that will also impact the simulated ROI because when a lineup is heavily duped, it doesn't pay out as much when it comes in first place or comes in second place because that prize money gets split. So the dupes column, you're going to see mostly all zeros for main slates. There'll be some lineups that are duped a little bit, but it does really come into play for showdowns. So after we have these top lineups favorited, we'll go and we'll look at some information on what our lineups contain. So a couple of things here, you could see the total exposures of each player, and then you could also press stack exposure if you turn this on. And what you're going to see here is the percentage of your lineups that are a QB in a specific stack type. So you see, for instance, right here, we have 14.7% of our lineups are double stacked Tua Tagovailoa lineups. Now, if we go back to the exposures page, you'll see here the amount of exposure we have of our top 150 lineups to each of these players, the projected fantasy points of each of those players, the pool ownership, which is what our ownership projection is on each of these players, and then the leverage. That's just going to be the difference between the pool ownership and the exposure. So this shows how far over or underweight to players you are. So in this set of lineups, we've got 61% of Rachaad White. We are well overweight to the field on him. Then you could also sort it by this, and you can see who do we end up coming in underweight to the field to. CeeDee Lamb is in about 10% of our lineups where he was projected for 30% ownership. So if I was uploading this as my final set of lineups, I would be rooting against CeeDee Lamb on this particular Sunday. Now, how do we customize these lineups? Right? We've got a top 150 lineups favorited, but haven't made any alterations as of yet. One of the things you could have done is you could have changed some players' projections or uploaded custom projections, and that would have made it so that your lineups were customized. But something else you could do as well is you could change the ROI of individual players. And what that is going to do is every single lineup with the individual player you change will either gain or lose a certain amount of expected ROI based on what you set it to. So for example, we had in here 61% of Rachaad White. And let's just say you decide you don't like Rachaad White for this week, or maybe you're just uncomfortable with the amount of exposure you are to him. You could set in here a negative 20% ROI boost or whatever number it is you choose. And then when you select boost ROI, every lineup that has Rachaad White in it now has a negative 20% ROI to it. So if we go and we unfavorite our top 150 lineups, and we refavored our top 150, you'll now see that we went from having 61% of Rachaad White to 50%. And then you could do as large of a negative ROI boost as you want to make it so that ownership number changes more. And the inverse works as well. So if you wanted to, you could go in here and you could say that you want maybe more of the 61% of Rachaad White from before. So if I give him a 25% ROI boost, go back here, and now you'll see every lineup with Rachaad White in it now is boosted by a 25% ROI. So as a result, we're going to have more of our top lineups having Rachaad White in them. So if you go back to our exposures column, we now have 71% of Rachaad White. And then if you ever want to clear the boosts, pretty easy, just clear boosts. Goes back to 0, boost ROI, and then same deal. You go back to the lineups page, unfavorite, and then refavor top 150, and then we're going to be back to the default number that we had on Rachaad White to start. Another way that you could lower your exposures to players is you could go to the exposures caps tab here. And let's say that you have a very specific amount of Rachaad White in mind that you want to play. Well, you could go in here and you could say, all right, I only want 40% of Rachaad White. And then if you click set exposures and adjust favorites, the top lineups that have Rachaad White are going to get favorited, but capping it at 40%. And then all of the rest of the lineups that are favored for you are going to be the top remaining lineups that don't have Rachaad White after we get past those first 40%. So then if we go to exposures, you'll see now Rachaad White, his exposure exactly at 40% because we set that exposure cap. And then same deal. If you ever want to undo any of this, you go into the exposures tab and you can change them back to 100%. You can also do a global max exposure. So let's say you don't want more than 30% of any player. You could type in 30% here. And then if you were to click the set exposures and adjust favorites, then you wouldn't get more than 30% of any individual player for your entire pool. But let's go and clear this and refavorite the top lineups now. And another thing you could do here as well in the ROI boost is, let's say if there's more of a stack you want, you could change an entire stack of a team as well. So if you want to get more Dolphin stacks, you could change this and give it a 10% ROI boost. And then same sort of deal. Every lineup that's a Dolphin stack would then have a 10% increase to its ROI. And then when you refavor your top lineups, you'd be getting to more of the Dolphins and be getting to more of Tua stacks with his pass catchers. Some other information here is that if you want to see the stack ROI, you could see in this sim what the ROI was of all the different stacks that were built across those 10,000 lineups. You see that all Tua Tagovailoa QB +2 lineups, in total, they had a 103.9% sim ROI in the simulation. And then triple stacks with Tua, they had an 82.1% stack ROI. You could also look at the player ROI to see what the individual ROI was in the sims for every player that was in this slate. So Tua, every lineup with him had a 56.8% ROI. Drake London, 50.9%. It's just some added information you could get about the players and the different teams that you're rostering. So that's really all you need to know about our simulations. It is customizable. If you want to change individual players, you certainly can, but you also don't have to. If you just want to trust our default data, that's something you could do as well. And then if you ever have any questions, you could always hit me up. One of the perks of being a Stokastic sub is you get access to our Discord channel. All of our content creators, our dev team, everybody's in the Discord channel. You could ask us questions whenever you want if you need help or assistance with any of this. And then the last thing you'd be doing here after you have these lineups built out, you simply click export favorites, and then your top 150 lineups or however many you selected, they're going to get exported to a CSV that you could upload directly to FanDuel, DraftKings, Owner's Box, wherever you're playing, or you could then copy and paste over existing lineups if you already have lineups that you want to alter. So other than that, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget, if you're signing up before week 1, it is just $1 to sign up for our core package. So if you're not sure if simulations are for you, try it out. Just $1 using that promo code kickoff. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you haven't done yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and good luck this football season.